right, let's start with what the media will not tell you tonight. Some of the biggest news in today's indictment is what is not included. It does not say that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians. It does not say that anybody on the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians. It does not say that President Trump obstructed justice. It does not say that Donald Trump Jr. attempted to collude with the Russians. Now, the same goes for Lieutenant General Michael Flynn and the Attorney General Jeff Sessions. The biggest examples of Russian collusion for 2016 that we know about, that we have real concrete evidence of, is one, Hillary Clinton, her bought and paid for dossier, the one that used Russian government sources to peddle Russian propaganda, lies to influence the American people in this past election in 2016. And the other example of Russia collusion, number two, is that we know to be true, deals with Uranium One and Vladimir Putin and people he had on the ground in America were involved in bribery and money laundering and kickback and racketeering schemes. It all took place in this country. We know all about that. We'll have more later on this tonight. But first, here are the key points from this indictment. 13 Russian nationals, 3 Russian companies launched a campaign of information warfare. It started back in 2014 and eventually culminated in interfering with the 2016 election. The goal was simple: to sow political discord in the United States of America. Yeah, no kidding. Now, we have been telling you all about Uranium One, all about the dossier filled with Russian lies. Now, this is critical. After the election, these same Russian trolls that attempted to undermine then President-elect Donald Trump, well, they went out there. President Trump finally is reacting to this today because they were undermining the president after the election. Russia started their anti-U.S. campaign in 2014, long before he announced that he would run for president. He said aye. And then the results of the election were not impacted. The Trump campaign did nothing wrong, no collusion. Now, the White House, they also put out a statement tonight, quoting the president. They said, quote, "It is more important than ever before to come together as Americans. We cannot allow those seeking to sow confusion, discord, rancor to be successful. It's time we stop the outlandish partisan attacks, the wild false allegations, the far-fetched theories, which only serve to further the agendas of bad actors like Russia and do nothing to protect the principles of our institutions. We must unite as Americans to protect the integrity of our democracy, our elections." Now, what this indictment shows is nothing short of a sophisticated effort by the Russians to gain influence in America. Now, we have been telling you this about Vladimir Putin, about Russian operatives, about how they've been involved in sophisticated schemes. We have been going back to as early as 2009. Remember, he had people, operatives on the ground with the purpose of breaking into America's uranium market. And we also told you how those Russian operatives were involved, and we knew it because we had an insider on the ground, an FBI informant, that they were involved in bribery, in kickbacks, in money laundering, racketeering, all in a scheme, yes, tied to Hillary Clinton. Now, that's the deal with the Clinton State Department and the Obama administration. They ignored this FBI investigation, what this informant was telling them was going on the inside, and inexplicably, they approved in 2010 giving Vladimir Putin control of over 20% of America's uranium market. We had the informant warning us on the inside the entire time. Nobody listened. And the clueless media, they ignored this Russian interference. Now, this only matters, apparently, if the Russians are involved, if you can use it to bludgeon President Trump politically. Now, sadly, Putin and Russia, they were successful in 2010. They got that uranium. Now, even though we already have a shortage of uranium in America, we have to import uranium. Now, let's get back to this indictment. It lays out allegations that begin in 2014, where Russian nationals, they were working together with a troll farm located in St. Petersburg, Russia, trying to influence the election. Why wouldn't they after they got uranium? Now, they did this by, quote, posing as U.S. persons and creating false U.S. personas, operated social media pages and groups designed to attract U.S. audiences. Now, these Russian trolls also stage political rallies while pretending to be American political activists and paid Americans in the U.S. to attack certain candidates. This operation had a monthly budget of over $1 million. It included Russians that were operating inside this country, just like they were in 2009. In this case, again, the Russians got caught red-handed. And as we have been explaining, well, there were no Americans, including anybody from the Trump campaign, that were knowingly involved, and these efforts did not impact the election results. Now, here's what the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, said earlier today.
Now, there is no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in this illegal activity. There is no allegation in the indictment that the charged conduct altered the outcome of the 2016 election.
And all you people in the media that paid no attention to Putin and his operatives in 2009 and 10 and Uranium One, pay close attention to what Rosenstein says here. Take a listen.
The Russians also recruited and paid real Americans to engage in political activities, promote political campaigns, and stage political rallies. The defendants and their co-conspirators pretended to be grassroots activists. According to the indictment, the Americans did not know that they were communicating with Russians. After the election, the defendants allegedly staged rallies to support the president-elect while simultaneously staging rallies to protest his election. For example, the defendants organized one rally to support the president-elect and another rally to oppose him, both in New York on the same day.
Both in New York the same day. So the Russians were actually organizing rallies and engaging in political activities for both campaigns. And after the election, they were seeking to undermine then-President-elect Donald Trump. Here's how the indictment lays it out. Quote, in or around November 2016, defendants and their co-conspirators organized a rally in New York through one organization, controlled groups designed to show your support for President-elect Donald Trump, held on or about November 12, 2016. At the exact same time, defendants and their co-conspirators, through another organization-controlled group, they organized a rally also in New York called Trump is Not My President, held on or about November 12, 2016. Now, similarly, defendants and their co-conspirators organized a rally entitled Charlotte Against Trump in Charlotte, North Carolina, held on or about November 19, 2016. So this wasn't as one-sided as the media is trying to make this out to be. In fact, this indictment continues to prove that the media has been wrong and lying to the American people. No evidence for over a year now, pushing their bizarre conspiracy theories about Trump-Russia collusion that, with no evidence, is non-existent. You may remember a lot of this.
A dizzying 24 hours in the Russia investigation, no longer just inching toward the president. This morning, it is more like careening.
I think this is a potentially more dangerous situation than Watergate, and we're at a very dangerous moment. And that's because we are looking at the possibility that the President of the United States and those around him during an election campaign colluded with a hostile foreign power to undermine the basis of our democracy.
Donald Trump is afraid. A political hurricane is out there at sea for him. We'll call it Hurricane Vladimir, if you will, the whole Russian thing.
This is evidence of willingness to commit collusion.
There's outright treason. I mean, there is no question that what he is doing is giving aid and comfort to the enemy.
Tom Friedman said the election hacking is at the caliber of a Pearl Harbor or a 9/11. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. Donald Trump now sits at the threshold of impeachment.
It's been over a year of these types of comments without any evidence. Facts obviously don't matter to the fake news media. No evidence of collusion, and this indictment says that no American, no member of the Trump campaign wittingly tried to help the Russians. Now, I know a lot of people are shocked by this indictment, and there was a gigantic collective gasp from liberals, the mainstream media, when this news came out earlier today. Why is anybody surprised? That's my question. Russian election interference, it goes back decades. And as we have been reporting, an FBI informant that is now talking to 3 separate congressional committees in just the last couple of weeks, well, he discovered back in 2009, undercover for 6 years, all told in his life 30 years, but he noticed in 2009 it was an informant with the FBI about a plan that Vladimir Putin had to corner America's uranium market. This all started in 2009. Then he discovered there was bribery, kickbacks, money laundering, racketeering, and other types of extortion going on. The FBI, then run by Robert Mueller, they were being informed every step of the way, and they did nothing. Robert Mueller has some questions to answer. And this informant is also saying Russia paid millions to a lobbying firm, all in an attempt to influence then-Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. That company, APCO Worldwide, they deny the allegations. Now, this Putin-led operation back in 2009, nobody in the media is telling you, started over years before, a year and a half before, the CFIUS board. That's 9 Obama federal agencies, including Hillary as Secretary of State, Eric Holder as Justice, approved the sale of Uranium One. And key players involved in that decision, they should have known all of this was going on, but they approved it anyway. And the real question is, knowing all of this, knowing Putin's efforts in 2009, and knowing we didn't have enough uranium in America, why would CFIUS and all these agencies and the Obama administration, why did they allow Russia, a hostile foreign entity, to take control of 20% of our uranium, the foundational material to make nuclear weapons? And we're supposed to be surprised at today's indictments? Now, here's the other aspect of all of this the left, the corrupt media will never tell you about. The Russian influence campaign, all right, this that they told you about today goes back to 2014. Where hell was the Obama administration? What did they do then to stop this? Now, remember, NBC News reported after the election the Obama administration didn't do more to stop Russia because they thought Hillary was going to win. That's NBC. So, in other words, it sounds like the Obama administration, they were complicit in this. They dropped the ball, and they were definitely, in this case, more warning signs you can shake a stick at. In April 2016, the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, he warned America's inability to predict Vladimir Putin's plans would be, quote, the biggest intelligence failure that we have had since 9/11. How right, sadly, he was. Now, Barack Obama needs to tell you, the American people, what he knew and when he knew it. Maybe Obama didn't take the Russian threat seriously. Remember back during the 2012 election, during a debate, he was mocking Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney was warning about the Russian threat. Take a look.
Governor Romney, I'm glad that you recognize that al-Qaeda is a threat, because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not al-Qaeda, you said Russia. And the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because, the Cold War has been over for 20 years.
Yeah, a year later, Putin has people bribing, extorting, money laundering, all in America to get involved in our uranium markets. Given what we know now, President Obama, the top members of his administration, they owe you an explanation. Hillary owes you an explanation, because what this did is a dereliction of duty. They failed to stop a major national security threat. We did reach out to Obama's office for comment. Shockingly, we haven't heard back. And another example of Russian collusion, of course, is the Clinton bought and paid for dossier filled with Russian and Russian government lies and propaganda. Now, Hillary Clinton and the DNC, they shelled out, what, over $12 million to fund this salacious and, of course, unverified dossier that was later used as the bulk of information to get a FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. The same dossier, the Republican memos found that the FBI used to lie in that FISA court to get that warrant to spy on a member of the Trump campaign. The FBI, Fusion GPS, nobody verified what was in the dossier. To this day, we haven't proven a thing in that dossier. And we now know that the bulk of that FISA application was made up of a political hit piece document put together by a former British spy, Christopher Steele, using Russian government sources, and some of Hillary's best friend as sources. Now, also breaking this hour, a lot of developments tonight as it relates to the case of Bruce and Nellie Orr. Now, we first reported on this husband and wife duo after it was discovered that Bruce Orr, remember the high-ranking Justice Department official, remember he passed on the anti-Trump Steele dossier. He gave it to the FBI. It was his wife, Nellie, working for Fusion GPS on the dossier. And according to a report in the Daily Caller, Bruce Orr, he attempted to hide now his wife's involvement with Fusion GPS by not disclosing on required legal ethic forms that Nellie Orr was being paid by Fusion GPS. Instead, Orr listed his wife as a cybersecurity analyst and did not disclose Fusion GPS in any way. But that's not all. According to the report, Bruce Orr, quote, did not obtain a conflict of interest waiver from his superiors at the Justice Department. So was Bruce Orr intentionally covering up his wife's involvement with Fusion GPS and that Russian dossier? And given that intentionally falsifying government ethics documents can result in jail time, is Mueller's investigation? Are they going to charge Bruce Ohr? Don't hold your breath. Now, also tonight, new information about James Comey's memos. Byron York, Washington Examiner, points out a very interesting article with the headline, "Why are the Comey memos secret?" Now, Byron York is reporting that in July of 2017, the FBI did allow lawmakers to see the memo about Comey's version of conversations that he had with President Trump, later leaked to the professor that leaked to the FBI that led to Robert Mueller. But anyway, the FBI made sure the information in these memos was severely restricted. Why would that be? Now, Comey testified under oath that he gave the memos to that friend. They leaked it to the New York Times in the hopes that Robert Mueller would be appointed a special counsel. It happened. Now, you would think that if those memos were so explosive and so damning and so damaging and proved obstruction of justice, which we keep hearing about, like Comey and the media and the Democrats are all claiming, that why don't we release the memos? But they're keeping them secret for a reason. Take a look at how Congressman Trey Gowdy, South Carolina, described the memos back in December.
The obstruction of justice, remember, that started being discussed when Comey had these memos that he said he made. I've read the memos. I've read every one of Comey's memos. They would be defense exhibit A in an obstruction of justice case, not prosecution exhibit, defense exhibit A. If Comey felt obstructed, he did a masterful job of keeping it out of any of his memos.
Defense Exhibit A. So the entire so-called scandal with the memo created by Comey, perpetrated by Democrats and the left-wing media complicit with the Democrats, it's absolutely a farce. It's a mere political tactic. It's been used to damage President Trump and undermine his presidency. Now, all the Comey memos should be released. What are they hiding? Now, also tonight, while today's indictment showed that Mueller is conducting serious work in the ongoing Russia investigation, which, by the way, nobody should be surprised about, there are still deeply concerning issues surrounding the team of liberal anti-Trump partisan investigators that Mueller tapped to lead his probe. Now, this includes Mueller's top prosecutor, Andrew Weissmann, or as the New York Times calls him, Mueller's pit bull. Now, for months, we've been reporting on Weissmann's generous donations to Democratic political campaigns, including thousands to President Obama. The Wall Street Journal had revealed that Weissmann actually attended the 2016 election night victory party for Hillary Clinton. And you can't forget that Weissmann actually praised then acting Attorney General Sally Yates for defying President Trump's travel ban after she was fired. Now, aside from Weissmann's clear political bias, the longtime prosecutor has also been accused of employing aggressive, sketchy prosecutorial tactics, which led to the imprisonment of 4 innocent Merrill Lynch executives. That case was ultimately overturned by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. And Weissmann's aggressive prosecutions also led to the downfall of the accounting giant Arthur Andersen. Tens of thousands of people lost their jobs. And by the way, the Supreme Court, they overturned him again, 9-0 in that case. And we also have a brand new damning report tonight, Sarah Carter, who will join us in a minute, detailing even more misconduct, including a 1997 case about Andrew Weissmann he was officially reprimanded by the judge for withholding evidence when he failed to disclose that a witness on behalf of the prosecution was also working for years as an FBI informant. This is in an organized crime case. In a memorandum, the judge reportedly described Weissmann's conduct as, quote, myopic withholding of information, reprehensible and subject, perhaps, to appropriate disciplinary measures. Oh, that's the guy Mueller hired? Ultimately, no such measures were taken. Weissmann's name was retroactively wiped from the complaint, and after a Weissmann ally fought to remove his name. And more recently, Weissmann was reported to the Department of Justice Inspector General and the Senate Judiciary Committee for, quote, corrupt legal practices. In fact, civil rights attorney David Schoen, he called for Weissmann to be investigated for this alleged past misconduct. We did reach out to the special counsel's office for comments on Sarah's reporting. Shockingly, they don't answer our calls. The sum of all of this is this. The big news today, zero evidence, again, a year plus, no evidence that Trump, his campaign, colluded in any way, shape, matter, or form. We have been telling you this for over a year. Show us the evidence. We want to see it. Now it's time for the Democrats and the media to finally start telling the truth to you, the American people, about the situation. And that means to tell you about real collusion as it relates to Uranium One in 2009, as it relates to why would you ever allow Putin and his operatives to get away with that, and number two, as it relates to the bought and paid for phony dossier that was all designed to manipulate the American people.